One preseason game left, final cutdowns, and then the home opener against the Baltimore Ravens on 9/11. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. I know our guy Green Bean is usually the one doing his shows from the road, but I couldn't help myself being down here in the south of France, Roman-built first century arena in the city of Nimes. I thought back to the first paper I ever wrote as a college student many years ago, which compared history of the ancient world using what their gladiators versus our modern gladiators, of course, being NFL football players. It's the closest thing we've got to it. Everyone gathers into these arenas by the thousands to watch people beat the hell out of each other. And pretty soon we'll be watching the Jets do just that, or so we hope. So, of course, the big story right now, Denzel Mims, he and his agent have let it be known that the Jets would like to move on, or that they would like the Jets to move forward and trade Denzel Mims. I really don't have a problem with Mims for this. I see a lot of fans who appear to be really angry that Mims has the nerve to do this. I'm looking at it from his perspective. The guy has worked as hard as you could have asked him this offseason, came into camp in great shape, and the bottom line is, he's a supremely talented guy who flashed as a rookie, looked like he was going to be the guy they thought he drafted. Last season had what is, in my estimation, the most disappointing season from a single player in Jets history, in my time as a fan. That may sound like a lot, but you look at what Mims did as a rookie. People projected year 2 would be an 800-900-yard season for him, and instead 8 catches for 100 yards, no touchdowns, absolute disaster, catastrophic drop-off. However, now he's asking for a deal, and he's in a situation where the coach who drafted him is gone, thank God, but the new offensive system in place is one that he does not fit. You've got the Jets have now drafted Elijah Moore. They've drafted Garrett Wilson. They've re-signed Braxton Berrios. They want these small, quick receivers to quick breaks in and out of their routes. Denzel Mims does not fit that description. That is not his game. He's done everything he can do, and now he's at the point where he's saying, I understand, I'm not going to be a part of your plans. Can we just move on now? The Jets have said they won't give Mims away for pennies. I understand that. I mean, of course, publicly, even if you were going to, you're not going to let that be known. But I do think the Jets believe Denzel Mims has some talent, which he does. Again, this was a guy some viewed as a first rounder, dropped to the Jets in round 2 when everyone thought it was this great steal. Now he's kind of up in the air. He's got to have to go to a system where he fits in and show what he can do in the NFL. Again, we saw him do some things as a rookie that gave you, it was reasonable to expect he was going to be a quality player. That hasn't panned out. So now he requests a trade. Totally valid as far as I'm concerned, but the Jets are right to not want to give Mims away for pennies. Carolina Panthers reportedly interested. This, of course, was the first team that popped to mind for everyone when the story broke. Why? Of course, Matt Rule, his college coach at Baylor, is now the head coach in Carolina. So now you don't know what to expect in terms of where Mims will go, but it makes sense for the Panthers to be interested. Now you've got one preseason game left. Training camp is shut down. You're going to see guys battling for roster spots in the final preseason game. Guys like Denzel Smart, the D lineman, who we discussed quite a bit last year. Apologize for the bells in the background here. But Denzel Smart, of course, last year had himself a fantastic camp, looked great in the preseason, did it again this year after spending last year on the practice squad. I think he's played well enough that if you try to stash him again, someone's going to snatch him up. The receivers are interesting because one of the things that makes Mims a little bit more expendable, you have a guy like Calvin Jackson who's playing well. And he's, both in games and practice. Of course, scored the game-winning touchdown in the opener and has looked really good during team periods in practice. You've got Irvin Charles, the small school guy out of the UIP, the undrafted free agent. He's looked well he's looked good in practice, has played all right in games, almost had a fantastic touchdown grab in the opener, had the ball pulled away by a DB, but again, he's a raw guy. And these are guys you're talking about as 4th, 5th, 6th receivers, so you can hang on to them if Denzel Mims goes and try to develop these young kids. There's going to be guys at other spots. The safety room has become interesting with the emergence of Will Parks. Elijah Riley, of course, was let go. He was picked up by another team. You still got Parks. You've got Pinnock. Of course, you added Whitehead. And you've got Joyner. Who knows what Ashton Davis' status is, because he hasn't done a whole lot at this point. Played a little bit better at the end of last season. One thing that could save him is his draft status. As a top 100 pick just a couple of years ago, Joe Douglas probably doesn't want to cut ties with him, which brings me to 2 other guys who are going to be interesting to see what the Jets do, what they do with that of course being Jabari Zuniga and LaMichael Pirine. Both guys who have done little to nothing in their time with the Jets, but haven't looked that bad in game action so far this preseason. Will that weigh enough to keep their roster spots? time will tell, but the Jets have a lot of talent on that D-line. You know, we saw Jonathan Marshall break out a little bit last week. He's a player that, you know I loved him coming out when they drafted him last year, and a lot of people, myself included, have talked about him needing to step up and have a big preseason. And he had one drive last week where he, picked himself up a sack and then had a big hit in the backfield on the following play. We're starting to see some of that explosion as he's getting more comfortable in the system, as they say, thinking less and being able to just react. So Jonathan Marshall's looked better. Jabari Zuniga's looked a little bit better as well. Again, will that be enough to save his roster spot? We'll have to wait and see. Safety room's interesting. Corner depth, obviously you're solid there with your two starters and Reed and Gardner. Bryce Hall struggled a little bit as of late. Rashad Wildgoose, a little bit of a long shot, but he's looked all right in preseason action. Not perfect, but he's looked pretty good. So a lot of spots, not just roster spots, but guys on the depth chart and where they're going to settle and land. Guys like Will Parks, guys like Ashton Davis. These guys aren't going to start, but they're battling for roster spots and they're battling for position on the depth chart. So one more preseason game to go. We'll see how it pans out. If you're ever in this part of the world, I highly recommend Nîmes Arena, Nimes. And that does it for now. We'll catch you soon. Myself and Dylan Terman, soon to be doing some live Facebook broadcasts for JetNation.com. And as I said, check out JetNation.com, log into the forums, and become a part of the most active Jets message boards on the web.